You're standing on a riverbank. It's roughly 60,000 years ago. The water in front of you is wide, brown, and moving fast. You can't see the bottom. You don't know what's under the surface. Crocodiles, maybe. Currents strong enough to pull a grown adult under and never let go. And behind you, the way you came, is no longer an option. The land is drying up. The food is gone. Whatever is on the other side of this river might be the only thing standing between your group and extinction. So, what do you do? This is the story of how ancient humans crossed some of the most dangerous water on Earth, without boats, without bridges, without any idea what waited on the other side. And the evidence for how they pulled it off is honestly kind of insane. Let's start with the obvious question. Why would anyone cross a dangerous river in the first place? The answer is simple and brutal. They didn't have a choice. Early humans were not explorers looking for adventure. They were animals following food, water, and climate. When a region dried out, when prey animals migrated, when a volcanic winter choked out vegetation for a generation, humans moved. And rivers, more often than not, were directly in the way. Rivers cut through valleys. Rivers separate continents. Rivers flood without warning and carry away anything caught in the current. For most of human history, a river wasn't scenery. It was a wall made of water, crocodiles, parasites, and unpredictable currents. And walls like that don't just get climbed, they get solved. Let's talk about the most extreme example first, because it changes everything we thought we knew about ancient humans. The island of Flores in modern-day Indonesia sits across a stretch of open ocean called the Wallace Line. This isn't a river, it's worse. It's deep water, strong currents, and no land in sight for the entire crossing. And yet, stone tools have been found on Flores dating back roughly 1 million years. That's before Homo sapiens even existed. That means an earlier human species, not us, crossed open water using nothing but whatever technology they had at the time. Researchers still argue about how this happened. Some think it was intentional, primitive rafts built from bamboo or lashed logs. Others think it was accidental, a tsunami tearing loose vegetation and carrying unlucky individuals out to sea on floating debris. Either way, someone survived. And their descendants kept surviving, isolated on that island for hundreds of thousands of years. If a pre-human species could cross open ocean by accident, rivers were never going to stop us. So how did they actually do it? Let's break down the real methods, the ones backed by evidence. Not guesswork. The first and oldest method is the simplest. Fording. Fording means walking across at the shallowest, calmest point you can find. This sounds obvious, but it required serious skill. Ancient humans had to read a river like a language. Where the water moves slow, it's usually deep. Where it moves fast and shallow, you can hear it before you see it. Sandbars shift season to season, so local knowledge mattered enormously. Groups that stayed in one region for generations would have known exactly where the safe crossing points were, and passed that knowledge down the same way they passed down which plants were poisonous. This wasn't guesswork, it was survival science refined over lifetimes. The second method is where it gets genuinely clever. Flotation. Long before boats existed, humans figured out that certain things float and certain things don't. Logs float. Bundled reeds float. Inflated animal bladders float. Archaeological evidence and anthropological studies of surviving hunter-gatherer groups suggest early humans used simple log rafts, sometimes just a single large trunk, to ferry themselves and their belongings across slow-moving water. Animal skins, especially ones with the fat still partially intact, repel water far better than you'd expect. Some groups likely wrapped their tools and food in hide bundles, sealed them, and used them as makeshift flotation devices while swimming beside them. It's not elegant, it's not a canoe, but it works, and that's all that mattered. Now here's a detail most people never think about. Ancient humans studied animals to learn how to cross safely. This is a survival technique still used by indigenous groups today. Watch where the herds cross. Elephants, wildebeest, and other large animals develop consistent river crossing routes over generations, almost like ancestral maps. These routes exist because animals, like humans, favor the shallowest and calmest points. If you're a human trying to cross a crocodile-infested river, following a well-worn animal crossing path isn't laziness. It's intelligence. It means less risk, more predictability, and a route already field-tested by thousands of animal crossings before yours. Timing mattered just as much as method. Rivers are not static. They swell during rainy seasons and shrink during dry ones. A river that's a death trap in 1 month might be a shallow trickle 3 months later. Ancient humans tracked seasonal patterns obsessively, because getting the timing wrong could mean drowning, or getting swept miles from your group with no way back. Evidence from early migration patterns out of Africa suggests that many crossings happened during specific climate windows when sea levels were lower and rivers were at their weakest. During the last glacial period, huge amounts of water were locked into ice sheets. That meant lower global sea levels, which meant some rivers and coastal waters that are wide and deep today were narrower, shallower, or entirely walkable thousands of years ago. Timing wasn't just smart. Sometimes it was the entire difference between a crossing being possible or completely impossible. Let's talk about danger, because rivers weren't just physical obstacles. They were ecosystems full of things that wanted to kill you. Crocodiles have existed in roughly their current form for tens of millions of years, which means every human river crossing in Africa and parts of Asia happened under the very real threat of an ambush predator. Hippos, despite looking slow and almost comical, are responsible for more human deaths in modern Africa than lions. They're aggressive, territorial, and devastatingly fast in water. Ancient humans crossing hippo territory weren't dealing with a myth. They were dealing with one of the most dangerous animals they would ever encounter, hidden almost entirely underwater. Then there's the water itself. Parasites like schistosomiasis, spread through contaminated freshwater, have plagued humans for thousands of years, with evidence of infection found in Egyptian mummies. A successful crossing didn't end when you reached the other bank. Sometimes the real danger was invisible, and it caught up with you weeks later. So why take the risk at all? Because the alternative was worse. Groups that refused to cross, that stayed rooted to a drying, depleted landscape, simply didn't survive long term. Evolution doesn't reward caution for its own sake. It rewards whatever keeps a population alive long enough to reproduce. The humans who learned to read currents, who studied animal crossing points, who built simple rafts out of desperation and necessity, those are the humans whose descendants eventually spread across every continent on Earth. Every river crossed, every ocean gap survived, every dangerous current successfully navigated is a direct link in the chain that leads to you existing right now. There's something worth sitting with here. We tend to imagine ancient humans as primitive, reactive, barely scraping by. But river crossings tell a different story. They tell a story of observation, patience, risk assessment, and problem solving under genuinely lethal pressure. No modern safety equipment, no weather forecast, no emergency services, just careful observation of water, animals, seasons, and enough courage to step into the unknown when staying still meant certain decline. The next time you cross a bridge without a second thought, remember that bridge represents tens of thousands of years of humans figuring out, one terrifying crossing at a time, how not to drown. So, would you have made the crossing? Or would you have stayed on the wrong side of the river and hoped for the best? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.